So this journey, this relationship is oneness. And we'll talk about that a little later, the oneness. And that's why we wear the colors, the same colors during Adventure in Spirit, to feel the oneness, our connectedness. And this journey is surrender. And I know right now in our world, there's a lot of chaotic energy moving around, and we are called to step up to a higher place in life. And I remembered a reading that I'd read many years ago that has affected me deeply, and I'm sure many of you have heard it, but it's definitely worth hearing again. It's from a Hopi elder, an anonymous Hopi elder. It was written many, many years ago, but it has a very potent and powerful message for us today. It says, "You have been telling people it is the 11th hour, but now you must go back and tell them that this is the hour, and there are things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? What is your relation? Where is your water? Do you know your garden? It is time now to speak your truth, to speak your truth. Create your community. Be good to each other. And do not look outside of yourself for your leader." Then he clasped his hands together, smiled, and said, "This could be a good time. This could be a good time. There is a river flowing very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those that will be afraid, and they want to cling on to the side. And if they do, they will feel torn apart and separated. Know that the river knows its destination, and we must let go of the shore. We must let go of the side and go into the middle and push off together and keep our eyes open and our heads above water and look around and see who's with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, especially ourselves. For the moment we do so, our spiritual growth and our journey comes to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. We must gather ourselves together. Banish the word struggle, not only from your vocabulary, but from your attitude. Banish it. No more struggle. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and with celebration. We are the ones we've been waiting for. If you want change in the world right now, it's for us to stand on those pillars of truth I talked about earlier. Now, that doesn't make us better than, more than, it doesn't rise us up and separate us. It allows us to see life with a more expanded perspective. It allows us to rise above the earthly appearances. And as Jesus said, do not judge by appearances. The kingdom of heaven is entered with childlike faith. We must expand our faith and confidence in the invisible. We know, and we talk about it every Sunday, that within each and every person there's a divine spark. A spark of God, a spark of love, a spark of creativity, a spark of light. You and I, at this time especially, need to take time to touch that spark. And I think one of the most beautiful ways, I've heard it spoken about many times, to get to that spark is if we have the courage to rest in the gap. That means step away from our thoughts, the barriers, the confines of our thoughts, and just rest in the gap, the space between our thoughts, because that's where the potency lies. That's where the oneness lies. That's where inspiration is received. And there's a poem. This is nothing new, this gap and this surrendering to something more. than just what we're thinking in the moment. Change your thinking, expand your thinking, be transformed by growing our mind through the inspiration from within. And the thought of the gap is nothing new. It's been spoken about for years and years and years. There's a poem by the 13th century mystic Rumi, and it's called "Our Soul is Like a Flame." And he says, our soul is like a flame. Sometimes the smoke is greater than the light. The little caveat is the smoke is our illusion, our limited perception, our limited thoughts about things. Sometimes the smoke is greater than the light. You know how that feels? When our separation, our unworthiness, our limitations are grander than that light within that is unlimited, the untapped potential that resides in everyone. And he said, when there's too much smoke, there's no more light in the house. Well, what we know is there's a spark that is never dimmed. But the light that we see, the light that we allow to connect us with the greater light, is dimmed by all the smoke and we can't see it. He goes on to say, lessen the smoke. Lessen the smoke, and the flame will leap through and bless you. When we have the courage to lessen the smoke, to surrender those old thoughts and ideas that keep us stuck in smallness, that keep us separated from anyone or anything, then whatever we call that flame, that inspiration, the love, the light, the goodness, the joy, the celebration will jump right through and bless us. And he said, don't you know yet? Don't you know yet it is your light that lights the world? So here we have a Hopi elder and a 13th century Sufi poet saying the same thing. This is nothing new. Are we going to get it? That we've got to use our own light to make the difference. That we can't be waiting for something else out there to make the change. We need to do it. I see the problem, the smoke, we could call our unsupervised ego. I'm not one that says kill the ego, because the ego is the thoughts we have about our small self, our human self. But if we let our unsupervised ego go on its own, all heck breaks loose. We struggle, we fight, because we're not restraining it. And fear takes over. And I'll tell you, fear is the greatest enemy of humankind. We get fearful. And I'll tell you, the unsupervised, fearful ego doesn't like to share. It doesn't like to bring out the best in people. It doesn't like to cooperate and bond. It gives its love conditionally. So if we want to change our life, we must get our ego in a cooperative energy. We have to work with both our small self and our larger self to expand into the greater good. Now, the best way for us to learn is through relationship. It's probably the hardest way too, right? Some relationships are wonderful, but all relationships are here to teach us. That's where our greatest growth and becoming come. We wouldn't know ourselves without each other. But there's key realizations that we need to know in order to maximize this learning through our relationships. And number one is we are connected to everything. Not some things, everything. Even things around the world that we don't see or know personally or physically, we're connected by that invisible thread of oneness. We're connected to it all. There's a collective consciousness that unites us all. So if something happens somewhere, it's going to affect everyone. That's why if we choose to stand on a pillar of greater truth, of greater understanding, we're creating that space for others to do the same. We can drag people down with our unconscious behavior. It's time for us to learn. So we're connected to everything, to everyone, to all creation, to Mother Earth itself, to the universe. We're connected to all of it. And the second realization that we have to have if we're going to really get the most out of these beautiful gifts of relationship is to realize that we are responsible for the quality of every one of our relationships. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be in physical contact with everyone in your life. There are people that we can't. It just doesn't work. It doesn't bring out the best in us. We know that, right? Are there people in your life that you just don't have around anymore because it's not the right thing, and instead of feeling guilty and awful about it, send them love and gratitude and goodness? But we are responsible for the quality of all of it. How we think about people, what we see when we look at people. What if you and I took a moment when we get in the space of anyone, whether we know them or not, to just take a breath and go into the gap without any preconceived judgment, without any attachment to appearances, and just rest in appreciation. That is another living being on this planet with me right now. That is another expression of God, of love, of spirit, of creativity. And just sit in the appreciation that rests in that gap between our thoughts. Can you imagine how different life would be if we could be there and spend time there and be in that state of appreciation? And of course it starts with ourselves. We cannot possibly live in that place of appreciation, whether it's for a waitress or later a clerk, somebody we're just passing on the street, or a family member or a friend. We can't do it unless we love ourselves first, unless we spend time in the gap just appreciating that divine spark within us, feeling connected to the beauty of what we have inside and outside, that we are here on purpose right now because we are the ones we've been waiting for. So first of all, remembering we're connected to everything and everyone. Second, realizing we're responsible for the quality of our relationships, not anybody else. We're responsible. It's where we lay our thoughts and our mind, and if we're willing to be in that gap of appreciation. And thirdly, the third thing is that you and I are absolutely called to realize that we are all one. And also remember, in our oneness, we are also individual expressions of the one. Unity does not translate to uniformity. Thank God for that. We're different, so we can be interesting. We can inspire each other. We can have our edges rub up against each other and realize, ooh, that's a place I need to be smoothed out a bit. We're here because we're different and we're the same. And so I'm just going to challenge us today in this thought of surrender. The journey is surrender. The relationship is oneness, remembering that. And the journey is surrender. Now, the definition of surrender is letting go of attachment to the outcome. But surrender gets a bad rap. How many of you guys especially love to surrender? You know, it's not in the DNA of this culture. You know, Eastern culture has a much more attachment to the consciousness of surrender, but it's imperative that we surrender. It's not surrendering the good in our life. It's not surrendering any of the positive joy, the possibilities. In fact, it's absolutely resting in the possibilities. It's not letting go of any of the beautiful ideas we have. It's surrendering to the outcome, surrendering to what it looks like, surrendering the experiences, appearances, and surrendering 100% the excuses we make not to live life fully, to be fully present and alive. Rumi, our beautiful poet, also said, I spend my days stringing and unstringing my instrument, while the song I came to sing remains inside me, unsung. You heard what Cheryl said about feeling that inspiration and going to school and doing her art, and how her life just grew from following that inspiration within. So when we talk about surrender, it's not about giving up, acquiescing. It's about synthesizing with the flow of life, synthesizing with a cooperative thought about co-creating with spirit, about the oneness that's calling us to be a part of this. I am here in this world right now too, and let inspiration come forward. And if you can't get there, let me ask you, what's the one thing you could surrender? What's one excuse you could surrender right now? One excuse to get you more in the flow of life. Say what? Time. There's not enough time. There's not enough resource. There's not enough. How about just the excuse of not enoughness? Just let it go. We have everything we need right now. There's nothing more we can need except allowing ourselves to be more in the gap and not controlled by the barriers of our thoughts. Do you get that part? So when we talk about the journey of surrender, it can really be exciting. Ernest Holmes said it's not about letting go of the beauty and joy that we have. It's about letting go of our small thinking and be released in the divine inspiration that's within us. Surrender to the divine inspiration that's part of us. Doesn't that sound good? Doesn't it sound beautiful? Isn't it exciting to think there's something more? If it's more love or light, because when we tap into that light in us, that inspiration, we can connect that light to the light of oneness, where we expand and grow in unbelievable possibilities. So this is Healing Sunday, and I want us to do a process right now so we can leave here a little less wound up, with a few more gaps in our own, just in our own being. So when I say just to open yourself, I just ask you to uncross your legs and arms to the best you can, so you open yourself, surrender to the open flow of something more in this moment. Open yourself up to the great pause, the great gap within us. I'm going to invite you to take a breath, because the breath guides us to that gap, that space, that possibility, that inspiration between the barriers of our thoughts. So just breathe into that gap. Just breathe into the space. And know that we can't possibly surrender something. We can't possibly surrender something that really belongs to life. We can't surrender it. It's there for us always. We can surrender things that keep us from fully living. We can surrender the barriers. So as we get into that place, that gap within, as we settle the mind and let it absolutely rest so gently on our heart, to be cradled by the heart of love that is our heart. And we let the space simply move us to a place of peace. As we let go of the confines of our personality right now and open, we may see or feel some smoke, some thoughts that keep us clouded in our mind, that we are separate, that we're not worthy, that we don't have everything we need, that there's not enough. And the smoke is simply there to teach us to have more childlike faith. Childlike faith, the children that trust, they remember where they came from God, they came from love, they came from oneness. That childlike faith, to have confidence in the invisible, to move the smoke aside and say, no, 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 there's more. And as the smoke dissipates and moves out, use your breath to get a larger sensation of the vibration of love, of light, of oneness, of beauty within your own self. To know we're on a journey of developing our soul into its greatest yet to be. It's a continuing journey that guides us to the place of oneness, where we feel no separation. There's learning and understanding to be had, but there's an awareness that we belong to one another. We are here for each other. So as you feel yourself growing in awareness of your own goodness, your own beauty, your own light, allow your light to touch the light of others, to touch the light of people in this room. Let this light that is our light of our oneness with Spirit, that is our light that connects us to the infinite goodness that is God, that is love. And as we feel our lights connect, this room lights up and becomes a light in the world. We rise up and become a light of the world, where we see beyond appearances. We feel the deep appreciation, and we can say within ourselves, deeply we are one. Deeply we are one. We can surrender to any thoughts of separation. We can learn from places that we get triggered or charged, and know that beyond it all, we are part of the beautiful, vast oneness. We are keeping our eyes open, our heads above water, and we are celebrating that we are on this journey together. We are here for each other. We can lean into that. We can know that we are not alone, and how good it feels. And as you heal within each one of us any place or thought of separation, just let that thought rest on the heart of love. And just continue to be in the gap, in the space, in the inspiration of all life. And as you feel that connection to each and every person in the beautiful light we shine, I'm going to invite you to just take a few nice deep breaths as you feel expanded and part of something even greater than you ever dreamed of. An inspiration that's beautiful, that not only heals ourself, but heals this beautiful earth in which we live. Ah, how good it is to be alive. I invite you to just gently open your eyes when you feel ready. And of course, that goodness, that love, that joy, that light, as we spread it out, just as that poem said in the beginning, it comes back and blesses us. So allow yourself to be fully blessed by the beauty of Spirit and blessed by each person here. How deeply, deeply, deeply we are all connected. May I know that I am so much better for knowing all of you. My life is richer. I can't even imagine what it would be like without the connections and the beauty we share. And when we leave today, may we simply allow, I just like to allow the appreciation I feel to just shower all of you and allow the appreciation every one of us feel to shower one another. May we leave here today more blessed, more joyful, celebrating life because we are the ones we've been waiting for. It's our time to shine our light and lead the world. Are you ready to do it together? Right now, let's seal it by saying, and so it is. I love and bless you all. Thank you. Thank you.